Hello students, I welcome you all to OBGY with Mackler. So in continuation with the previous topic, now we are going to discuss about primary amenorrhea. So before starting, let's have a quick rapid revision about what is amenorrhea. So basically amenorrhea means absence of menstruation, where A stands for absence and menorrhea stands for menstruation. Now this amenorrhea can broadly be classified into two types. One is primary amenorrhea, second is secondary amenorrhea. So what do you mean by primary amenorrhea? So primary amenorrhea means a female who hasn't experienced any menstruation at all. Let's say for example, a female is 15 years of age or 13 years of age, or let's say even a 40-year-old female, she hasn't attained any menstruation at all. So primary amenorrhea basically means a female who hasn't attained any menstruation at all. And secondary amenorrhea means a female who has previously been menstruating normally, but currently now she hasn't experienced any menstruation for a period of about 3 months. 3 months or 90 days she hasn't experienced menstruation. So she was previously menstruating normally, but now for a period of about 3 months she doesn't have any menstruation. So since she had a menstruation previously, she is a case of secondary amenorrhea. Whereas primary amenorrhea, a female who hasn't experienced any menstruation at all. Okay, so now let's discuss about the primary amenorrhea. Okay, so what is the ideal definition of primary amenorrhea? So the ideal definition of primary amenorrhea is absence of menstruation in a female. Let's say for example, a 15-year-old female, in her there is absence of menstruation, but she has attained breastbudding. So absence of menstruation in a female who is about 15 years of age and she has attained breastbudding, which is a sign of puberty, but still she hasn't experienced any menstruation. So since she hasn't attained any menstruation, but she has attained the signs of puberty, that is breastbudding, she is a case of primary amenorrhea. Or absence of menstruation in a female who is 13-year-old and she hasn't attained any breastbudding. So she hasn't attained the sign of puberty, which is breastbudding, as well as she hasn't experienced any menstruation at all. She is also a case of primary amenorrhea. Okay. And it can also be defined as absence of menstruation in a female who hasn't experienced menstruation within 3 years of breastbudding. So let's say for example, a female who has experienced breastbudding, which is a sign of puberty, the female had attained breastbudding, but after attaining the breastbudding, she hasn't experienced any periods for the next 3 years. So within 3 years, she hasn't attained any menstruation. So she is also termed as a case of primary amenorrhea. Or absence of menstruation in a female, let's say for example a 14-year-old female, and in her there are signs of hirsutism. What is hirsutism? So hirsutism is basically a physical finding in a female which happens due to the biochemical abnormalities, that is increase in levels of androgens in the female. And the increase in levels of androgen can be due to different causes as well. The most common causes could be polycystic ovarian syndrome, where the problem is with increase in androgen production by the ovary, and congenital adrenal hyperplasia, where there is congenitally by birth itself there is hyperplasia of the adrenal glands. Because of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, there is going to be increase in androgen levels in that female. So because of that reason, the female can develop signs of hirsutism as well. What are signs of hirsutism? It basically means growth of male pattern hair, that is hirsutism. Or any female with excessive eating, excessive exercise and stress, these can also lead to absence of menstruation in a female as well. So as we know, primary amenorrhea means absence of menstruation in a female. In other words, she hasn't experienced any menstruation until now. So any female with no history of menstruation previously and in her breastbudding is present or absent, within 3 years of breastbudding she hasn't attained any menstruation or signs of hirsutism is present in her, then she is a case of primary amenorrhea. Okay? Yes. Now, before discussing about the causes of primary amenorrhea, it is important for us to learn about the menstrual cycle, right? So as we have discussed in the previous module, so menstrual cycle basically deals with the flow chart, right? So from the hypothalamus, from the paraventricular nucleus of the hypothalamus, gonadotropic releasing hormone is released. This GnRH will act on the anterior pituitary. While acting on the anterior pituitary, it is going to release two hormones. What are those two hormones? FSH and LH, right? It is going to release FSH and LH. So this FSH and LH will act upon the ovaries. Okay, FSH and LH, follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, will act upon the ovary, and in the ovary it acts upon the granulosa cells and Theca cells. While acting upon the granulosa cells, it will release estrogen, inhibin B. So the function of estrogen is to proliferate the uterine endometrium, right? And inhibin B will have a negative feedback on the FSH, right? And luteinized granulosa cells will release progesterone. The main function of progesterone is to support the uterine endometrium, right? And Theca cells, the main function is to, it will assist in the ovulation. How? Because when estrogen, when present in concentration of about 200 picogram for a period of about 48 hours, it is going to have a positive feedback on the LH. Now, this LH will lead to LH surge. Because of this LH surge, the meiotic division, which was arrested in the diplotin stage of the prophase, is going to get completed, and ovulation is going to occur. So with the ovulation, that is the secondary oocyte formation and corpus luteal formation is going to occur. From the corpus luteum, the main hormone which is going to be produced is going to be the progesterone, followed by estrogen and inhibin A. And also these Theca cells will produce androgens. So Theca cells produce androgens. These androgens enters the granulosa cells and get converted into estrogen as well. So this is a basic concept of menstrual cycle which is occurring in every single female, right? Now let's discuss about where is the problem happening in a female with primary amenorrhea. So we are going to take into consideration 1, 2, 3 and 4. What is 1? 1 is hypothalamus, 2 is pituitary, 3 is ovary and 4 is uterus, right? So basically we are going to deal with the major causes. So let's go with the organ wise. Okay, first take into consideration hypothalamus. So there is a condition called as Kallmann syndrome. So what do you mean by Kallmann syndrome? So Kallmann syndrome is actually a syndrome. It is actually a genetic disorder where the problem is with the hypothalamic failure. See, because of the hypothalamic failure, since the hypothalamus itself is going to fail, there is going to be no release of GnRH. So when there is going to be no release of GnRH, this GnRH cannot act upon the anterior pituitary and release FSH and LH. So the major problem is with the hypothalamus itself. There is hypothalamic failure, and the karyotype for this Kallmann syndrome is 46XX. Okay, so this genetic disorder, Kallmann syndrome 46XX, is hypothalamic failure. Since there is hypothalamic failure, this will lead to decrease in GnRH. Because of this decreased GnRH, there is going to be, it will never act upon the anterior pituitary and it will never release FSH and LH. So the entire process of menstruation is stopped at the level of hypothalamus itself. So then those people who are having Kallmann syndrome 46XX, they are a case of primary amenorrhea, since the problem is with the hypothalamus. Am I right? Yes. Okay, so simultaneously we will discuss about each of the syndrome in detail, but as of now we have to understand about primary amenorrhea. Now, what is the second one? The second one is pituitary. To be even more particular, it is anterior pituitary. In pituitary, we'll discuss about the tumor called as craniopharyngioma. Right? Craniopharyngioma. That can be microadenoma or a macroadenoma. Since it is a space occupying lesion, this pituitary, there is a space occupying tumor being present in the pituitary. So because of that reason, the actual function of the pituitary can get compromised and there will be decrease in release of the FSH and LH. So since the problem is with the pituitary, the female is going to experience primary amenorrhea as well. So initially we discussed about the problem with the hypothalamus, where there is hypothalamic failure which is going to lead to decrease in the GnRH, as well as in pituitary we have discussed about a tumor called craniopharyngioma, and it can be a microadenoma or a macroadenoma. Micro is less than 1 centimeter, macro is more than 1 centimeter. So this will lead to decrease in FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary. And we have discussed about third. In third, what we discussed? In third, we have discussed about the ovary, right? So what could be the problem in ovary? So majorly the problem in ovary could be because of the dysgenetic ovaries. Where you will get dysgenetic ovaries. Dysgenetic, what do you mean by dysgenetic? So dysgenetic means abnormal growth and development. Abnormal growth and development. So during the development itself, there is abnormal growth and development of the female gonad, that is ovary. So because of this abnormal growth and development, the gonad is going to be dysgenetic gonads. So there is going to be no function with this ovary. So where can we see these conditions? We can see this in two kinds. One is going to be Turner syndrome, and the other condition is going to be Swyer syndrome. And what is the karyotype for this? Turner syndrome is always 45XO. Please remember this, it's a very important question. So 45XO is Turner syndrome and Swyer syndrome is 46XY. 46XY is Swyer syndrome, 45XO is Turner syndrome. So the problem is with the ovaries. So since the ovaries are dysgenetic, they are abnormal right from the growth and development, we have nothing to do with the ovary. So the main problem here is going to be with the ovary. So the problem can either be with the hypothalamus, the problem can either be with the pituitary, or it can be with the ovary as well. And last one, fourth, we have discussed about the uterus, right? So what could be the problem with the uterus? So it may be because the uterus has some congenital anomalies as well. So what are the congenital anomalies of the uterus are called as? It is called as Mullerian agenesis, which is 46XX. What do you mean by Mullerian agenesis? Mullerian agenesis means we all know that Mullerian duct is very important for the formation of female internal genitalia. What are the female internal genitalia?